Sitters, what's good? This is Joey Edge along with Chris Martinez.
What's happening?
And Kevin Brockway is in the building tonight.
It's great to be here, guys. Always good to be back in beautiful Lake City.
Heck yeah, I like the way that sounds. And we are front porch sitting. I don't know if you actually meant that or not, but
Felt good.
yeah, it felt like you meant it. So that's good enough for me.
It's genuine.
Lake City?
Yeah.
Well, I've told you guys my first high school football assignment, or my first assignment with the Gainesville Sun back in 2003, was covering a Lake City high school football game.
Heck
There you
yeah. Heck yeah. Speaking of that, Mr. Hosford, Trey Hosford, the new principal, not new, he's been there for a while now, but new for you. The principal at Columbia High School, he called me today and he was like, hey, Kevin's coming on the show tonight. I was like, he is? He's like, man, he's one of the best. And just make sure you treat him right. And I was like, all right, I'll do what I can for you. told me there was different people doing it back then, and yeah, it was solid as can be. But Chris, before we really get into the show, let's talk about Chris is here too, by the way. He said he wasn't dolled up enough tonight, I guess.
I feel like I look great tonight.
Yeah.
I even shaved my neck and everything. No, man, we're gonna put the main event on the main screen, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But before we get into any of that, Chris, let's talk about our guy JW Weaponry, or our guy John Woodley at JW Weaponry.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. They're incredible, right?
Yeah.
So they had their 12th anniversary sale. It's crazy to think they've been open for 12 years. That is going to be June 13th and 14th. So just in time for Father's Day. Coach Allen, Joey, is making this chicken and rice on Saturday, June 14th.
Okay.
True story.
Yeah.
$10 a cup like normal.
Okay.
One pot. So you better be there like in line early. Don't make that
only
face.
one pot?
I can't control the quantity. I can just make sure it's going to be there. John says anyone that buys a firearm during that sale on Saturday will receive a voucher for a free cup of Coach Allen's chicken and rice. So
Wow.
you need a gun for Father's Day anyways.
Yep.
And you're also going to get great food. Here we go. Like, say less. It's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, June 14th?
June 14th and June 13th. The sale goes on both days. The chicken and rice will be sold on that Saturday, June 14th.
I got you. If you can't make it and you need to call them for whatever reason, give them a call. 386-243-8587 is the number to JW Weaponry. That's 386-243-8587. And I'm telling you right now, that chicken and rice is worth it, and so are the prices at JW Weaponry. As good of people as you'll find. John, man, I text John all the time about the most random stuff, and he's always willing to answer, and he really is kind of the man.
He's
honestly.
extremely smart, too. That's just
Yeah.
why you reach out.
Mahoney said if I had to rank of my favorite Chris's, they would go number 1, FPS Chris, number 2, colored shirt Chris, and number 3, off-camera Chris.
Yeah, off-camera Chris frees me up a little bit, I'll be honest. A little bit of freedom over here. I love it. I'm able to, perform, no pressure. You know what I mean? So, off-camera is a good one. Collared shirt, when was that? I came after a banquet maybe or something. It was a Union County banquet, I believe.
I think it might have been. I know it was a beautiful collared shirt. If I remember
sir.
correctly, it was a little Hawaiian-y.
Yeah, I believe so.
I could be wrong on that. I'm getting older. I don't remember things as well as I used to.
I think it was a pink polo button up, I believe. But it's okay. Well, I digress.
Could have been that.
Yes, sir. What are we talking about tonight, man?
Man, so I think first we're gonna go to Kevin Brockway.
I'm
Gator,
excited about that.
Gator reporter Kevin Brockway. So real quick before we get into the interview, LSU Shreveport, I believe it was 59-0 in the room. Does anybody know that off the top of their head?
I believe it was also
59-0.
Undefeated.
Undefeated in baseball. How hard is that to do?
I mean, I don't know that I can remember seeing a season like that. I mean, Oklahoma softball did it, but I think we talked about it earlier. It's a little different with softball. They're pitching. They need a dominant arm. And but I will say it is impressive that they were able to keep a dominant arm for all those years in a row, through the tournaments, too. That's the different part, I think. This is a single season. Oklahoma did it for, 4 years in a row?
Yeah, it was a few.
Or something crazy.
Yeah.
So that means through all the conference tournaments, through Omaha, that's insane when you start thinking about it like that, Joey.
Yeah.
But 59-0 in a single year is got to be top 3, and it's probably not 3.
Incredibly consistent, yeah.
That's for me. That's it. Baseball is such a hard game to be there every night, to show up with your best every night, and to go undefeated is pretty impressive. Not pretty impressive. It's very impressive. Even in high school, the best of the best don't go undefeated. I mean, you look at teams like Tampa Jesuit and those guys that are just really, really good. They don't go undefeated.
I have a question for you, Kevin and Joey.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm springing it on you here, so we'll start with you, Kevin. Is the baseball at NAIA, is there a huge discrepancy between like the top and then everyone that they play? Or is it more like balanced? NAIA is NAIA and the rosters are all similar in talent?
Yeah, you would have to wonder that. I mean, I wouldn't know that, but you would think that that could perhaps play a factor. And, I go back to when Florida went, I believe it was 18-0 in the SEC in 2014, 2015, or 2013, 14, and they got to the Final Four that year. And they actually went 21-0 when you considered they won the SEC tournament that year. And to be fair, I mean, it was an incredible accomplishment, but it was a down SEC that year. I think only 2 or 3 teams made the tournament. And Kentucky did make the Final Four that year. But, you take a look at now in Florida's national championship season, and they had 4 SEC losses, I believe, and Auburn won it with 3. But it was just a much more balanced league. It was a tougher league, and you had 12 or 13 in. So there's something to be said for that, the level of competition. And, of course, like back in the day, or back a few years ago when I was in Indiana, they were all trumpeting, obviously, the 1976 team, which was the last college basketball team to go unbeaten. And I was at the Final Four in 2021, right, when Gonzaga challenged that. They got all the way to the NCAA final game. That was kind of during the COVID year, the year after when they were in the bubble. But they ran into a buzzsaw in Baylor that played in the Big 12, and they eventually got them.
Yeah. So for me, Chris, I think it's the NAI in general is there's tiers to it. There's definitely a top tier where Matthew Mahoney is at Gwinnett College and close to Atlanta. They're extremely good at a lot of sports. Like they're really good. So the top of the top in NAI is really good baseball, and then there's some NAI baseball that's not very good that I've seen. I played D3 baseball. And, we played NAIA teams, and there was some that I was like, man, these guys, like AUM at the time, Auburn University of Montgomery, like they were extremely good at that time. And then we played a couple that were not good at all. So, like, it's there's some really good baseball teams in NAIA, and then there's some
what
not.
about the South Florida area? Like, is Nova or St. Thomas? I'm trying to think. Are they NAIA? Are they Division II or Division III?
I believe they're all NAIA.
NAIA.
Yeah.
Good or not good? Or
it's Weber down there.
Yeah.
Golly, there was somebody else.
Palm Beach.
Yep.
Atlantic or something. Yeah.
There's one other one down there.
Yeah.
They're not bad. None of those schools are bad. They're not. I wouldn't call them great. Like they're not in that category. I don't think.
Okay.
But they're solid. Mahoney said the top 3 to 4 in NAIA would compete at the top of D2.
Okay.
So.
But then there's he also said there's a massive tier. 16 to 40 are mediocre, and then 40 plus will get beat by the 5 of us and Brenton pitching.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I mean, Ben's got some stuff.
I didn't know who he meant with Brenton. I thought he meant Benton.
I assume it's Benton.
If he means your son, then I know we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kaiser. That's the other one I was thinking of. Kaiser
in Southeastern.
Yeah.
Kaiser, Boca Raton, I think, right?
Yep.
So, anyways, I thought it was a fun topic.
That's massive. What are some other notable seasons that stick out to you, Joey?
So I don't want to go football because I feel like football's kind of easy.
I have one.
Go ahead.
Why you think? Why you rack your brain? Why both of you rack your brains?
Okay.
All right.
I think the 15-16 Warriors.
Ooh.
They did not win the finals that year, but they were 73-9.
That's what I thought. I knew it was better than the 72-10 Bulls.
Yeah, that team broke 25 NBA records that season alone.
And lost to LeBron and Kyrie in the finals.
Yeah, exactly. They went 24 games without losing a game.
They lost to a lot of Kyrie in the finals. Kyrie played really well in those finals.
Yeah. They did. But that was a really, really good individual season. They didn't put the stamp on it by winning it all. 73-9 in the NBA. It's wild.
Yeah,
So,
it's pretty amazing.
Out of curiosity, would you rather have that season or the Bulls season in 96 where they went 72-10, 95-96?
Where the Bulls won it all?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bulls.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because they
95,
finished
96.
the job, yeah.
Yeah, me too. Give me the 72-10 Bulls that destroyed everybody in the playoffs. Yeah, they were solid. All right. So before we get into the interview, let's go ahead and do both of the 2 ad reads.
Yeah.
We'll do my guy Brian at Brian Sports.
Yep.
Any of your sporting good needs, Brian will get you hooked up. He just got just thought of something. He got us some bags for Columbia High baseball. This past week, did a really good job with them. They look excellent, and I forgot to give them to my counterparts that coach with me today, so that's my fault. Sorry about that, guys. I told you guys I'd bring them, and I did
They're
not.
going to be upset with you.
Yeah, but they look amazing. It's pretty simple. That's kind of what Brian does. He's a staple in the community. He's always going to be there to help and do everything you need. So give Brian a call, 386-755-0570. Mention Front Porch Sitting, get 10% off. And, go see my dude Brian. You got the next one?
Yeah, he's in the building.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the Josh McCardle. The Josh McCardle.
The GOAT.
The best haircut hangout in town. I think on 5 p.m. on Fridays it turns into Whiskers and Whiskey, allegedly. Maybe 6 p.m., I believe. I'm not sure. Something like that. I think there's 2 or 3 people will be there tomorrow at this time, allegedly. So
I have to run a baseball workout thing, so I won't be there.
Yeah, you do. It is an absolutely great time. I'm not saying that because Josh is in the building. We've asked him a lot of times to come hang out, Joey, but he finally did.
It took somebody else to bring him.
It took a Gator expert. It took a Gator expert to make it happen.
Yeah.
But he's here nonetheless. So shout out Josh, man, doing an excellent job. Whatever you need, it's taken care of there. The haircut is exceptional. The experience is equally as good. Go see Josh or get on the schedule, Joey. There's a number to text to do so. It may be a little bit of a wait out, but it is worth it. We promise.
100% worth it. What is it? The next new sitter that texts you at the number 386-247-1430. New, Curtis, not previous. New. The next new person gets a free haircut on Josh. Free haircut on Josh. We actually just had one more come to you the other day, Jared Scott. He said it was phenomenal. Josh said he's a great guy. He maybe misremembers him, but that's okay. I'm kidding. Jared is a great guy. But yeah, 386-247-1430. Text Josh right now. Tell him you need to get on the schedule. You get a free cut. You're welcome in advance because Josh is that kind of dude.
Absolutely. We have some comments in there. I'm going to grab them real fast. Jared Scott.
Yeah.
He said the Mariners 116-46 and not winning at all in baseball.
That was amazing, yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing
that's
year,
insane.
yeah.
That was a wild
116-46 is wild.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. Let's see. Jake Kennedy, Josh, he said hello. He's a loyal sitter, but also a visitor of Josh McCardle's barbershop. And then Matt Mahoney said, ask Josh when's the last time Uncle Mike came through.
Today's Thursday.
Recently.
Probably
Tuesday.
probably,
this week.
Yeah, probably Tuesday, Matt.
This week, Matt. So a lot of heads get cut over there. You want to read Trace?
Yeah, we'll get to Trey's in a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we're going to save that for when we actually get into it.
basketball?
Yeah, when we get into it.
That's a good one, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
All right, so without further ado, Mr. Kevin Brockway, reporter for the Gainesville Sun. Is that correct?
Yes, and Gannett, Florida, all
Yep.
over the state. My stories appear in Jacksonville, Palm Beach now, and everything. It was a good kind of carrot stick to get me back from Indiana. Was that go statewide now and stuff. All the papers in the Panhandle, Pensacola, Fort Walton Beach, Panama City, and then down in Southwest Florida too, Naples, Fort Myers, which is kind of crazy. And it's kind of crazy because I actually worked at those papers a long time ago. I worked at Northwest Florida Daily News back in '99. I worked at the Naples Daily News from '99 to '03, and now they're all kind of part of the same chain now, which is kind of nuts the way it comes full circle. But it's good to be back.
Wow, that's incredible. So it's safe to say that you're like statewide?
Yeah, pretty much statewide. And USA Today, occasionally my stories appear there. We have a pretty vast SEC network too. Like sometimes my stories appear in Knoxville, News Sentinel. We've got papers in Louisiana, Gannett papers there, properties like Shreveport, Homa, and I'm trying to think of the other one. Lafayette is another one. So it's pretty much almost every SEC market. Jackson, Mississippi.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
we're all
incredible.
Tuscaloosa. We're all over the place. Yeah, so it's good, and it's good that we have that network because we all can kind of help each other out too. All the SEC writers throughout our Gannett network, and we help each other out on podcasts. We help each other out, sometimes on news stories, trade information, and so forth. So it's a nice, vast network. It's a lot different of a Gainesville Sun than I was at previously, and it's was one of the things that attracted me to come back in 2022.
Awesome.
yeah.
So you're a bit overqualified?
Slightly, yeah. You know how it is.
To be here?
Yeah, to be here.
Yeah, to be here.
No, I'm probably a bit underqualified now to work at the Gainesville Sun now that my stories are appearing in USA Today, but that's fine. You know how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome, man.
According to Curtis Mesnard, who's in the building as well, the Paul Feinbaum show.
I've been on Paul a few times. Yeah, Paul is he's interesting. It can be a little intimidating being on his show from time to time because he can try to bait you into saying things. But he's no, Paul is a good egg. Paul's had me on a lot over the years actually, and he had me on. Even I think the first time I went on his show was like back in 2014, and he was asking me questions back then about Billy Donovan if we would leave for an NBA team, and that was when Billy had that one really rough last year in 2014, 2015, and he just didn't want to stick around for another rebuild, and that's when he decided to go to the Thunder. So
excellent.
I like it. So just a little backstory about you before we get into a lot of Gator stuff. What got you into like sports journalism in general?
Yeah. Well, I'm a New York guy. I was born in the city, and I was raised kind of in the New York suburbs. So I grew up reading a lot of New York papers, and as you know, it's a great sports area, a lot of teams. I grew up reading Mike Lupica, Steve Jacobson, a lot of the columnists from the Times, the Daily News, New York Post. So it just, a great sports, like Gainesville is, obviously with the Gators and stuff, but you had so many teams, Yankees, Mets, Jets. Being from Queens, I drew my allegiance to the Mets and the Jets, so long-suffering fans of both those teams. And I originally thought that I was going to go into TV, but I found out that I had the face for radio and the voice for print. But it's amazing that it all comes full circle, though, because of the technology now, and you have to be multi-platform. You have to appear on radio shows and TV shows, and because I studied broadcast at a school a little south from the University of Florida, let's put it that way, where I got my college education. No,
we can say it.
I'm a Hurricane, yeah, but I mean, it keeps my bias out a little bit. But I studied broadcast journalism there and political science, and actually that worked me out well because I'm very comfortable in these kind of situations, talking on the mic and so forth, and even shooting video on cell phone, which is something you have to do now. But the technology, it's just amazing how it's all changed in the last 20 to 30 years that I've been in the business.
No doubt. So you just kind of nailed it here. Like, being that you've done this job for 20 or 30 years.
How long have you been doing it total?
32 years.
32 years.
I got my start. Well, when I was in college, I was kind of a student correspondent with the Palm Beach Post a little bit, but my first full-time job, believe it or not, was in Key West, Florida, doing the Daily Fishing Report back in 1993, which was amazing. And people used to call up. They used to be all excited about their catches. And one time in the newsroom, a guy called up and he said, "Is Calvin there? Calvin Brockway?" And sure enough, the news, that nickname stuck. Trust me, for my 5 years in Key West, I wasn't Kevin Brockway, I was Calvin Brockley, all because of that dumb caller. It became, doing that. And Key West High School had amazing high school baseball in the 1990s when I was there. Khalil Green, who was a shortstop, went on to Clemson, to win the Golden Spikes and played in the major leagues.
Drafted by the Padres.
I covered him. I covered Ben Harrison, who went on to play for the Gators as well, and J.R. Mounts, who was drafted in the third round by the White Sox, and then he had some leg problems, I think, and then he tried to play football at the University of Miami, but he was an amazing two-way athlete down there. So it was a good experience down there, Key West, and they would draw like 2,000 people for their high school baseball games.
That's incredible.
They were. It was, that was the big show in town was high school baseball. They had a very good coach in Ralph Enriquez, who I believe came back there. With the state titles, they've won, I think, 11, and they won their 10th in 1998. I remember writing the headline. I'd been promoted to sports editor. I refer to it as Tensational when they won their 10th state title.
Ooh, that's a pretty good headline, but that's also really cool. Before we go off Key West, there was a guy there named Tad Cervantes. He pitched there probably in the early to mid 90s. You may not remember him, but he ended up moving to he came to Lake City Community College. Okay. Stayed in Lake City, still lives in Lake City, and he was my pitching coach, and he used to yell and say mean things to me. So
Tad Cervantes, yeah. Well, there was another guy, Bronson Arroyo, who went to Hernando, and then he ended up, he was from Key West.
He was pretty good too.
He was pretty good. Went to the Pirates, and amazing talent down there.
Yeah. What's been your favorite spot? You've been everywhere, obviously. What's been your favorite place to do your job, if you will?
Yeah. Well, I was discussing this when we were, having dinner. Nashville. And I've seen that city grow because I used to go every year to cover Vanderbilt, and then they had the SEC basketball tournament there. But it's just amazing how that town has really risen to be this mecca town, with the comeback of country western music and spring break and bridal parties and so forth. It's just a really fun atmosphere.
Yeah.
Athens is a very underrated SEC city. When I was in the Big Ten a little bit, when I was covering Indiana, I liked Chicago a lot. I liked Ann Arbor. Was a good town as far as like Big Ten cities are concerned. And I know Curtis is upset. Yeah. But I mean, Columbus was, a little great.
I don't think you made that better for him.
I've been to Columbus before, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
And,
West Coast, I've been fortunate to get out to. I really love San Francisco, actually. I was just out there, and that was my first time out there for the Sweet 16 Elite 8. And that's my favorite West Coast city by far.
Sweet. That's awesome. That's awesome. It's really cool to be able to do your job. I say job very loosely, something you enjoy to do.
Yeah.
And all of these different locations, I think that's really that's a blessing to be able to go travel and do what you like to do.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I got into it too, was to see the country. And I have friends. I have a friend of mine who used to work with Naples. He does like U.S. Olympic gymnastics, so he's been to Europe. I mean, he's done that, which is amazing. International, yeah. I mean, he was covered the Winter Olympics in Russia, I think, in Sochi, and he did the Olympics in Tokyo. I mean, he covered Simone Biles, so that's pretty amazing too. And that would be a pretty neat step before the end of my career if I was able to do an Olympics. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that would be pretty dope.
I love the Olympics. I'm a sucker for that.
Yeah. We here on the front porch, we are Olympic people. We do like the Olympics a lot. So I think you alluded to it a little bit earlier, but who was your favorite team growing up?
The Mets, yeah,
the Mets.
Huge Mets guy, still am.
So being from up north, did you have a college team that you liked or not really?
Well, it was funny. I gravitated towards the Hurricanes. It's one of the reasons why I went down there. That was kind of, I was a little bit of a Notre Dame fan, but they were kind of terrible under Jerry Faust in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And then I graduated. But college basketball, I was a big St. John's fan.
Okay.
Growing up, I was, Walter Berry, Chris Mullen, that team in '85 that went to the Final Four. That was my college basketball team, and I loved the Big East in college basketball. And that was kind of, in the 1980s, the Big East was it. They had 1985 was the year where they had 3 of the 4 teams from the Final Four: St. John's, Georgetown, and Villanova. And of course, Villanova had that amazing upset over Georgetown in the national championship game. So yeah, that was St. John's was my college basketball team. And college football, I gravitated a little bit towards Miami, and that's why I went to school there. It was they were kind of a little brash, and of course, and the rivalry with Notre Dame, the Catholics versus convicts, that was interesting and appealing, and it was a good time.
I got a question for you that wasn't on the script, and I apologize.
Okay, no worries. No worries.
We're shooting from the hip a little bit.
Yeah, we're having fun.
Yeah, so it being from the Northeast, I went to a football game. Florida State played Boston College.
Yeah.
And here recently, and we went to stop in a couple little pubs, and like they had no interest at all in any college sport. It was only like the Bruins, the Celtics.
Yeah.
It was the Bruins. That's right.
Yeah.
Bruins, the Celtics, the Red Sox. We were in Boston.
Yeah.
Patriots.
Yeah, the Patriots. Yeah. Oh yeah, God, the Patriots. Tom Brady. What is like? Why is that? And I think I know the answer. I think it's pretty obvious, but I'd like for you to spell it out since you lived in that region.
Yeah, no, I think it's what you grow up with, right? And I think what happened is, like, in the state of Florida, the college teams were around before, the
right.
Gators, and, your first pro team was the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
But generations grew up with the Gators, they grew up with the Seminoles, they grew up with the Hurricanes. So it's a college sports state still that's trying to become a pro sports state, whereas in that region of the Northeast, the pro sports teams came first and were more prominent. And listen, the Pac-12 died because of that.
Yeah.
The Pac-12 died because they were in a lot of markets where there were pro markets. They didn't care about college sports. And the ACC has the same problem. You mentioned Boston College. You mentioned Pitt. Even Miami when it's down, right? What I mean? The pro sports overshadow it. It became, maybe in the late 80s and early 90s when Miami was winning, it was, maybe a Miami town, but now it's become a Miami Heat town and a Florida Panthers town now.
Heck yeah.
Because of hockey. You just follow the winners. But there's just a lot more competition, whereas, in a lot of the SEC cities, it's the only game in town.
Absolutely.
And that's what makes – and a lot of the Big Ten cities, too, the same thing.
I think you freaking nailed it. So we were talking to a bartender there, and he basically said as such, and not as eloquent as you just laid it out there for us. But it was a shock to me because I've been in the South my entire life. I had never really been in the Northeast, and certainly not for a sporting event. And I was sitting there, and we're drinking our pint or whatever, and he was talking to us like, why were you here, whatever. Yeah. And it was like unbelievable to me. I was like, you don't care about the game at all? He's like, no, that game's on Saturday. I don't care about that game on Saturday. I care about the one on Sunday. And I was like, okay. I mean, I get it. It makes sense. Like the tradition rich, and they're so tradition rich in the Northeast.
I'll tell you a quick funny Boston College story because my godson went to school there about 5 or 6 years ago, and Steve Adazio was the head coach, and they literally used to be able to call the plays from the stands when Steve Adazio was coaching.
Wow. I'm shocked.
It was like first down, dive into the line.
Yeah, that holds up.
Yeah. All right. So how long have you covered Gator athletics?
Yeah. So on and off since 2003. I mean, I came here in 2003 mainly originally as a basketball writer and helping out with football, and then in 2019, I left for Indiana to cover the Hoosiers and came back in 2022. So on and off, it's been about 22 years, yeah. But, I mean, the 4-year sojourn in Indiana would probably make it 18 years.
Gotcha. So what was your favorite time to cover Gator athletics? Like, I think we all know the answer to this because it was probably the same as a fan, like.
Yeah, the 25 to 2010 years were amazing just because of the basketball championships stacked with the football championships, and getting to go. Like, I remember in 2008 covering the BCS championship game and we, this is back when, newspapers had money. And we stayed at the Fort Lauderdale Beach Marriott the whole week. I mean, and they treated us like kings, and it was amazing. And I took my brother to Joe's Stone Crab for dinner and turned in a $200 receipt for an expense, and they didn't bat an eyelash. And good luck doing that now. But between that, covering the back-to-back national championship teams in 07 and 08, 06 and 07, excuse me, and New Orleans is another city too. That was always a lot of fun. And the Gators, I remember when the Gators were in New Orleans in 06. I think it was me, Gary Parrish, and Jeff Goodman, two big-time college basketball writers. And we were all, younger then and crazier then. So we're on Bourbon Street at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and there's a well-known karaoke bar there called the Cat's Meow. And we went there, and we sang Sexual Healing at 4 in the morning. Got back to our hotel rooms. And ended up, the next day, covering, I think Florida played Purdue in the round of 32 game and barely beat them. That was 07, yeah. That was a little bit of a scare for the Gators, actually. Purdue, Matt Painter was a young coach, and he kind of had them on the rocks. But Florida found a way to win and repeat as national champions. And we were all hungover the next day.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, a little bit.
On our, almost sleeping on our laptops. But,
That's going to carry me into the next question. What's your favorite experience or moment covering really anything? It don't have to be Gator related. Just covering anything.
No, it's cool when you cover a national championship, and I've been very fortunate that obviously the first Gator basketball national championship 06 and 07, and then going out to Omaha in 2017 covering the baseball national championship was pretty special too. And Omaha's fun also in terms of, and I've been back there recently the last couple of years. Obviously, it didn't work out for him this year, but how the city gets behind that event as well, and the pageantry of that event. And if you're a baseball guy, it's a lot of fun. And I've always been a big baseball guy, obviously being a Mets fan growing up in New York. So love the game. I feel like I know the game pretty well. And covering college baseball. Some people don't enjoy covering college baseball because of all the length of the games and the walks and pitching changes, but I really like it.
I got you. One of the guys I coach high school baseball with, he told me that Omaha's a must, especially when your team's there. Like when the Gators go, he's like, the next time the Gators go, just go with me, please. And I was like, I guess I will. I've never been. I've always wanted to go. So that's on the to-do list next time the Gators make it to Omaha. So I'm gonna make it there.
No doubt. I'm gonna catch these from Matt.
Yeah.
All right. So Matt Mahoney, he's a radio personality,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
He said, I can only imagine the number of press conferences that you had to sit in, Kevin.
Yeah.
My question for you is, who's delivered the best press conference quote?
Wow, that's a good one.
That's a lot. And then the second part of that was actually, there's two more parts. The worst press conference experience, and then the funniest press conference from coach or player.
Yeah. You know, I could tell you the worst first off the top of my head. Going through some of those Jim McElwain press conferences were brutal. The whole, you have freedom of choice, but you don't have freedom of responsibility.
Oh,
and,
yes, sir.
And yet, and he had all these freaking oaky lines, you know. It
Yeah.
was really something. So, yeah, Coach Mack was, he was really something. I'm trying to think of some funny ones or some good ones, you know, over the years. Pleasant coaches. You know, I mean, like guys like Rick Pitino were always very charming. You know, Billy had his moments where he could be very charming and a lot of fun. You know, Urban was a little blunt. You know, I never had a chance to cover Spurrier, you know, which was unfortunate. But I do remember one very funny quip regarding Spurrier. Back in 2010, I used to cover the visiting locker room when Robbie Andrew was the main football writer. So Steve Spurrier was a South Carolina coach, and that was the year that Florida and South Carolina played, and the winner was going to be the SEC East champion. Spurrier had Marcus Lattimore on that team, and they beat him. They beat Florida, and that was kind of the beginning of the end for Urban, you know, leaving. So I went into the locker room with Spurrier, and Spurrier had this line. He said, "Sometimes Gamecocks get out alive at the Swamp." Which was a pretty good one. That was a pretty good quote.
I like that one.
Yeah.
I like that. Too.
You don't like that. You don't like that.
I don't. I try to be nice, but I don't.
Me personally,
like that.
I love that one.
Yeah,
It's actually a good quote, but
yeah, that was a good one. So Spurrier could always spin a yarn, you know.
Yeah.
But I didn't get a chance to cover him at Florida, which was unfortunate because I know he had a lot of, you know, the citrus. You can't spell citrus without UT,
Right,
and
yeah.
all that stuff is
the Auburn
really,
with the library burning down and
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
the coloring books.
The coloring books, yeah.
Coloring
But
books.
Auburn's, yeah, library burned down and stuff and everything, yeah. But, you know, that's the problem, though, today is that coaches are so much more guarded. You know, they can't
Yeah.
relax and have fun. They're worried about what they say. So it's hard to really, you know, get that kind of humor and that candid. I mean, Bowden was candid in kind of a grandfatherly way also, I would say, you know, but, you know, in a different kind of way. But there's certain guys that you could see through that were kind of phonies.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head.
You don't
in-
have to name them by name.
No, there
Well,
was,
in the Big Ten, I can name some in the Big Ten because like I was never a big Brad Underwood fan at Illinois. I always thought that there was a little bit of a disingenuous. Oh, I'll tell you another guy who was miserable, who I hated, was Archie Miller. Was a very miserable guy.
I can see it.
Not fun to cover at all.
I
Yeah.
can see it.
Yeah, not fun.
He didn't
Whereas
look like he was having fun coaching.
Whereas Matt Painter was one of my favorite guys to deal with up there. Dusty May is a great guy. I dealt with him when he was a Florida assistant.
Yeah.
Then when he went to Florida Atlantic, and now he's at Michigan, he was one of my favorite guys to cover.
I'm a big Dusty
and
May guy.
I like Mike. I would say that Mike White and Larry Coker, who I covered a little bit at Miami, were like two of the nicest coaches that I ever dealt with.
I can 100% see that.
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah.
Can we get Trey's comment? His question here, or wait?
Yeah, I can tell you. Yeah, we can do. We can definitely do. You got it up.
No.
You can pull it
I'll
up.
find it. Go ahead.
What one of my favorites personally is Dan Mullen, the thumb wrestling.
Yeah, and I didn't deal with
enjoyed
Dan.
that quote.
I didn't deal with Dan because I had left, so I didn't really get
Right.
a chance to deal with him much. But yeah, McElwain was, you know, and Muschamp Boom could be intense at times. Yeah, he was definitely wound a little tight. Yeah.
Speaking of intense, I got one for you. Our principal asked the question earlier, like way earlier, but we're going to circle back to it because now's a good time. Can you compare Billy Donovan and Todd Golden?
Yeah. Well, you know, Billy, I think they're both innovative minds in their own generation, but Todd leads more in analytics, whereas Billy was more of a heartbeat guy. You know what I mean? Going with his gut, a little bit different that way. But Billy was a savant offensively with how he could design plays off pick and rolls. It's unbelievable. But for Billy, it really took Larry Shiat to come in and shore up the defense for it to kind of take the next step. And with Todd, I think a little bit too. People forget Todd was 16 and 17 his first year,
Right.
and I thought that he inherited an all SEC guy in Colin Castleton. One of the problems was Castleton got hurt, but I think Todd too, like Kevin Hovde and John Anderchek, two guys that have left. They're going to go to new jobs. Anderchek to Campbell. Anderchek was very instrumental in helping that defense improve. And Kevin Hovde is a very bright offensive mind. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year. But I think that there's another question I saw about Todd Golden. Maybe we can address now about whether he'll win another national championship. And I think it could happen. But I think the best – I'm going to go on record right now. I think the best chance for it to happen might be next year.
Yeah.
Because I really like what they brought back. And I like if they can get Boogie Flant's head on straight. I think A.J. Brown is kind of an underrated guard out of Ohio and can shoot a little bit.
I agree.
And Xavier Lee, the chemistry with Xavier Lee and Boogie Flan will be interesting to watch.
I agree with that.
But if they can coexist and if they can realize that the bread and butter really is going to be in the front court this season, and I think Alex Condon, he's a hard worker. He's a great kid. He's going to take another step. And Tommy Houck, you can make the argument, was the second best player. They're going to play him a little more in the wing next year, too.
Yeah.
Which is going to be fascinating to watch, too. And you would have a front line of 6'9", 6'11", 6'10".
I think that'll help his draft stock, too.
Yeah. No question. Yeah, and his ability to, be a little more skilled. And I did a story this week about, where I talked to different, college basketball experts I respect about, can Florida repeat? Mike DeCourcy still thinks Houck has to get a little bit stronger, but he loves the skill level. Chris Dorge, Tom Crean, who I talked to, I got to know a little bit during my time in Indiana. They're all very high on Florida again next year with Todd Golden. And, he got the contract extension richly deserved. And I think they're capable of, they're going to be probably a preseason top 5 team next year and going to be capable of another run.
Wow.
Love it.
Gotta love that. As a Gator fan, you have to love that, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I love it.
Golly.
I love basketball. Basketball has always been one of my favorite. Like it's probably my favorite sport to play for sure. But it's also always been, especially college basketball. March Madness is easily my favorite time of year. I take the Thursday and Friday off work every year. We grill out. We watch basketball in here until literally people either sleep here and we do it again tomorrow, or they leave and come back. But
it's the greatest sporting event. Yeah. Well, if the Gators are not there next year, I'll come up and we'll
there
we
talk
go.
to me.
But hopefully, I
be
doubt
there.
that's going to happen.
I hope. I'll be honest. I hope you're not here next year, but soon. I hope that does happen. Clayton Steinrich is a big Denver fan right here. I don't know if you can see his comment, but Gator product Walter Clayton Jr., soon to be Nuggets legend. He's excited about that because everybody that has a potential to land in Denver is a legend in his world.
Where the Nuggets pick? I'm trying to think.
I would assume they got to be like 23, 24. I saw a mock that had him.
I don't know if he's gonna last that long.
I saw a mock that had him at 20 to the Heat.
The Magic like him too a lot. That's what I'm hearing behind the scenes. That the Orlando Magic really, they would love to get him. And I think Walt's gonna be a good pro. I really do.
I do too.
I think he's gonna be. Shooting is such a value, and the kid's a hard worker. He's risen up from a 0-1-star kid out of Bartow to get this far. Yeah. And that's the whole thing about, recruiting rankings and stuff. And I don't know if we're going to get into that about how the industry has changed, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's
and
coming.
I'll have my spiel on recruiting rankings.
But. Clayton said we don't have a first round pick. Let him go. You got anything, Chris?
No, I feel like it's going beautifully. I don't really want to go out too far off of Florida, so we'll keep it here. I'll verge off of the University of Florida a little bit. What was because you've been to multiple different places. What was your coolest moment covering sports? And it may be Florida, but it doesn't have to be Florida. Your job covering athletics in general. What was if you could define one moment in your mind that was the coolest time? You're like, wow, I'm being paid for this type of moment. What would it have been?
Yeah, I think the Final Fours are just special, and I've been to a few over the years. One time when I first started in Indiana, they flew me to Minnesota, which was a little strange because I think they thought Purdue was going to be in it, and they lost in the Elite Eight that year. So that was that was neat. Covering spring training too, as a baseball guy in Naples-Fort Myers area.
Oh, yeah.
I covered the Red Sox team right before they broke through with Pedro and Nomar and
they were pretty
Derek
good.
Lowe and the late Tim Wakefield. It's terrible what happened. because I love Wake, and Wake was a big fishing guy. We used to talk fishing a lot in the clubhouse and stuff, and that was kind of neat. I mean, baseball players. I mean, Manny Ramirez was very weird. He didn't like to talk. Jimmy Williams was a very weird guy. He kind of spoke in Stengalese, and he would sit on the porch bench at spring training. But covering spring training with some of those Red Sox guys too, that was a pretty neat experience as a young, Major League Baseball fan. And that was kind of in the early 2000s when baseball was, still, you had the big Yankees-Red Sox rivalry, and it was still kind of, somewhat in the heart of the consciousness before the NFL really took over and college football really took over. That was kind of neat. And even the Twins, I got to cover Torrey Hunter a little bit, and AJ Przinsky.
He's a fun guy, right?
Yeah, AJ's all right. Yeah, he could be a little, I know other players didn't like him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So one of our buddies, he played professional baseball and played with the Rangers for a few years, and he was on the podcast and talked about AJ. He personally loved him.
Yeah.
But he also alluded to the fact that there's a lot of guys that don't like him at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he could rub a lot of guys the wrong way and stuff. And but AJ, he's a successful broadcaster now. He's on Fox and went to Dr. Phillips High School, Orlando kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Good stuff. All right, so you've been covering athletics for quite a while now.
Yeah.
What's changed from the beginning to now? You've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but just kind of a broad spectrum of what's been going. What's changed from the beginning to 2025?
Yeah, no, the whole technology aspect of it, I think, has changed, and with it has come. When I started out in the early '90s, it used to be and mid '90s. I mean, college used to be the proving ground, right? It used to be. You made your name in college and then you went to the pros. But I think what happened is with the technology, with the internet, with, obviously the recruiting rankings.
Yes.
And how these kids are inflated now so much younger.
Yeah.
And they're being identified so much younger. And you have agents that are looking for the next great thing when they're 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
Or even, putting Bryce Harper on the cover of Sports Illustrated when he's 16 and 17. There's so much. Everyone wants to get in on them younger. And I don't know. I worry at times that it creates a certain sense of entitlement. I think the kids today, though, a lot of them I deal with I think they're a little more polished today, too, with NIL. They're maybe a little bit smarter in terms of their image and their brand, so they don't get into trouble maybe the way they did 10 or 20 years ago. But at the same time, I wonder sometimes about the work ethic too, because it's kind of like, I've seen that a lot with the Miami football program, for example. When you get pumped up as a big time high school recruit, and you come to Miami and you have yacht parties and you have girls and all this, you think you're already a star when you get there. So what's the incentive to work, right?
Right.
And that's why I think they've fallen short of that national championship level that they used to have in the 80s and the 90s, where they had to prove themselves there. And I do think that there's a lot of that that goes on throughout college sports at certain places, and you have to have a strong enough culture to kind of nip that in the bud. And certainly there's some programs that do it, and certainly a favorite program of one of our people in the audience here, Ohio State, has figured it out, right? And Jeremiah Smith, and I think too, that whole idea of like Nick Saban, coming in and getting the talent from the state of Florida, and Ohio State coming in, and Urban Meyer, right? In terms of going down and getting like the Bosa twins, for example, from Fort Lauderdale. I mean, Florida, the Big Three programs used to lock down the state, and they don't anymore, and that's been a big problem. And I've noticed a change in that as well.
Yeah, I think you know this. So I coach high school football, of course, and like for us to see the trickle down effect that we see from like the college kids to our high school kids, like our high profile high school kids. Fortunately, we're in a situation where we can pretty much keep them grounded. But metro areas like say Miami and Orlando and Jacksonville, if you will, I know they have a much harder time of keeping those kids grounded, because the moment you try to ground that kid or humble them, they'll say, "Okay, coach, hey, no worries, I'm going 10 minutes down the road."
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing in the NIL, like in college football, they hit the portal immediately.
Yeah.
So it's like a fine line of like I get the name, image, likeness thing or whatever, but like you said, like there still has to be an incentive to work. And I know there's a couple kids on Florida State's roster currently that maybe really fell in love with the check that they received monthly, and didn't necessarily pay attention to the long-term effect of their decisions that they made, felt somewhat untouchable, and are now back in school because they have to be, because the draft stock plummeted.
No question.
I think that's happening like statewide, countrywide, and it's trickling down into high school. It's insane because if you're a junior in high school, you're friends with the seniors. When the seniors graduate, they go to college and they go play. Now you're the senior and you're friends with these guys that are making that check is hitting their account every month, and so now you think that's like expected. Like it's almost like it's a guaranteed thing. I'm entitled. You nailed it. You said entitled. I'm entitled. Why work? So and so is I'm better than so and so, and he's getting this, and this. It's a slippery slope, man.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
You have to be self-motivated, and I'll say this because I know some people in the NBA and the NFL personnel world, and the number one question they ask in the draft process is like, do you love football? Do you love basketball? Or do you love being a basketball star? Or do you love being a football star?
Right.
So, and that's the thing. Like, again, it's that feeling that you've arrived versus, are you going to try to perfect the craft to the best of your ability? And that's, identifying those people that have that. I mean, Billy Donovan used to love gym rats. That was like his thing. Like, he would love recruiting those kind of guys. He would try to identify those guys, people that were going to be in the gym 24 hours a day. That was like a prerequisite.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of them, and that's why he had great success, is because he recruited a lot of guys that were ultra competitive. They were gym rats. I mean, Billy told me a story once in 2000, even though I didn't cover that team, but it was my first year on the beat, because I had asked him about that Final Four team in 2000 with Teddy DuPay and Mike Miller. And he said, most competitive group I ever coached, almost every practice ended in a fight. But that's how competitive they were
Right.
and how intense they were.
Yeah.
But it was like that because they cared and they just wanted to get better. And even through all that, conflict, it kind of bonded them as well.
So I can speak on that part you just talked about as a coach. The best teams we ever had at Columbia High School, whether I was a player or a coach, were the ones that were willing. Like if it came to a scrap, like they're not backing down from each other. Like
exactly.
It's going to be that. Like
Because it's competitive.
we're going to compete.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
if we're going to take it there, then we are all going to take it there.
Yeah.
And at practice, our practices will be sometimes. And I say this on our team that went to the Final Four. We got beat by Vieira, but that team, it was nothing for practice to end an hour early because we couldn't stop the fights.
Right.
It was one after the other, and it wasn't like a show to try to. No, those guys just were competing at the highest level.
Right.
And I promise our practices were more competitive than Friday nights.
Yeah.
And it showed. But like you mentioned it, gym rats. They love the game. I tell our guys now, I just want a bunch of tryhards. Like, I know it's not cool to be a tryhard anymore.
Right.
I only want to coach tryhards.
Right.
Please be a tryhard gym rat, a guy that loves the game. Like, we'll play it in the parking lot. Coach, if you want us to go play in the parking lot, we'll play in the parking lot. Because you love football that much.
And the best teams, too, and I saw this a little in the 2024-25 team that won it all, the recent floor, are the teams that are self-led. The teams that have the leaders in the building and in the clubhouse that are gonna police and keep everyone in line.
Soccer.
Yeah.
And Walter was that guy. Elijah Martin was very much that guy. Even as a newcomer, was able to kind of police things, and that's how Will Richard too, and that's how they got it done.
Yeah, you
Part
get
of how they got it done. You gotta have the talent too, obviously.
Right.
And the coaching, but
No, but that, like you just said, that player-led mentality is such a huge thing, and you could tell with Florida, they had it with those three that you mentioned specifically. Elijah Martin, Will Richard, and Walter Clayton Jr. all had that ability to go out and let you know, hey, that's not okay. What you're doing right now is not okay. The effort that you're giving is not okay.
Yeah.
Let's go do this, and we're going to do it the right way.
You just know that. And you can only be that type of guy, that type of player, if you are a gym rat, if you are willing to get on the ground or get on the floor for a loose ball, or if you're willing to lay it out there for your university and for yourself. then you can truly lead that way. But if you're fake, a front runner,
Yeah.
then you can't lead.
No.
Yeah.
So your best players, your leaders, they have to be the guys that are the gym rats, that are they love the sport. Like, it has to be that way. And Florida didn't nail it. They nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Golden did a really good job of putting that roster together, and I don't know if he did it on purpose of finding the gym rats or if they all just happened to be gym rats, but you can tell that they enjoyed playing the game, but they enjoyed playing the game together.
Yes.
Like, they really were. It looked, and maybe they're not off the court, but on the court it looked like they were a really, really, really close group.
Yes.
You can't
And
fake that.
very similar to the 06, 07 teams in terms of how they moved and shared the ball. And just remember this, the ball moves faster than any man, you know.
Yep.
So, you get that ball moving, you share the ball, you look for one another, that goes a long way. And that would be, I think my concern with this new backcourt, will it get a little stagnant? Boogie is kind of that traditional New York point guard that wants to drive the basket to get his shots. If they can get him to buy into that and to share the basketball and to be that guy, and he and Xavier and Brown all click, or they get the ball, the big guys at the right time, then I think it's going to work and they're going to make another run. If not, then they could take a step back.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Let's switch gears a little bit, just to go to Gator football.
Sure.
We got I think it's a make or break season.
I agree.
For Billy Napier, I think that he's got to. I honestly, in my opinion, this is just me speaking. I think he's got to go 9-3
this year
and make the playoffs.
This year,
I think it's got to happen.
you're crazy.
I think it's got to happen. It
No
has to happen
way.
that way.
Show
What do
me
you?
yes.
How do you feel about the upcoming season? Do you see 9-3 as a possibility? Do you think it's the ceiling? Do you think it's a realistic situation? What do you think?
I'm high on this team, and I do think 9 wins is possible. But I think, obviously, DJ Lagway has to stay healthy, and by all accounts, he's back throwing again. He's throwing pretty well, and I think that's a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
I think we saw at the end of last season finally an SEC level offensive and defensive line of scrimmage, and I think that's the key. I think Caleb Banks emerged, Tyreek Sapp. You're starting to get a little more depth there. A little concerned about Cam Jackson and Des Watson leaving, a little bit of the bulk inside. But I do think that the front seven, I think you're going to see Miles Graham take a step. He's going to be very good. I really like what Pop Howard did last year before he got injured as well. Aaron Childs. Jaden Robinson, the kid
There
from
he
Lake
is.
City.
There he
Talk
is.
to me.
That's
Talk
what I
to
want
me.
to hear.
Very good, promising player. So you got 4 really good linebackers there. And then the secondary, by all accounts, Cormani McLean has his head on straight, and he's a talented kid. Obviously, we know the Dijon Johnson situation.
Yeah.
So I think there's a chance there for Cormani. I mean, if he has a good camp. And Devin Moore is a guy that has to stay healthy, too. That's another key, too.
Yeah.
But he's a long, rangy corner who's capable of making plays.
Got some top end speed.
Castell and Thornton at safeties, and Sharif Denson at the star. And I think Aaron Gates still has the knee issue. We're going to see how he progresses. So I think they're okay there. And Dallas Wilson, showed a little something in the spring game. He showed that, and he is a grown man, 6'2", 206, coming into, he's got an SEC-ready body. And he has a knack for getting open. He's got speed. He's got instincts. He's got everything you want there at receiver. And he has the potential to really be an impact freshman in this offense. So I think that 2 running backs are pretty good, Jaden Baugh, Jacoby Jackson, and the line of scrimmage with 4 returning offensive linemen and Jake Slaughter at center.
Friend of the show. He's been on before.
Yeah, I like. And we like. We like Jake's a great kid too.
Yeah,
Trinity
really
Catholic
is.
kid.
He is.
From that little town of Spar, Florida.
Yep.
He's something for sure. So it's a tough schedule again, as we know, but I think a little more manageable schedule. In some ways.
I agree.
And I wonder that back-to-back with LSU and Miami on the road, I think is going to be tricky. Then you have the bye coming back to Texas A&M. But I'm telling you, man, Georgia, Hunter, does Hunter Stovall scare you? What's the quarterback situation in Tennessee?
Right.
And also with Georgia, the number of draft picks that they've lost. I think those 2 programs are a little vulnerable. And I think that this is the year for Florida. You're older, you're more mature to take advantage of that. So I think the back end of the schedule doesn't seem as fearsome nearly as it did last year.
I agree with that. And that's kind of why I said the 9 wins. I think Billy has to take that next step. and I think the writing on the wall and the ability to do that is there because of the reasons that you mentioned. I think that Georgia is, like you said, vulnerable. They're gettable this year. I think LSU's gettable this year. I just think that those teams are gettable. Now, whether it happens or not, that's yet to be seen. It's still not going to be an easy road. It's not going to be a cakewalk for anybody, but the ability to make that happen is there this year, and I just think that the Gators have to kind of get that done.
All right, so I want to preface it like with this:
Okay.
nine wins as like a make or break is insane to me. 9 wins being possible, sure, fine, I'm okay with that. But 9 wins, if he gets 8 wins, if he goes 8-4, they're not firing Billy Napier. No freaking way, man.
It depends on how those 8 go. Do they lose to
There's
Tennessee?
no
Do they lose to
way.
Tennessee the same way they lost to Tennessee last year?
Maybe.
And if they do, that's the losses were what got me last year. It wasn't the wins. The losses that they had, the Tennessee game. There was one other game that I can't. Curtis would, I'm sure he would know. He complained about it a lot last year. Every loss, true.
Yeah.
But
Was soul crushing.
the Tennessee one really stuck out to me. Just the way that the loss happened.
I don't think they were coached well that game. I think
that's
they
a
got
problem,
out-coached.
right?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
You know what I thought was kind of weird? I almost thought the Ole Miss win was the make good for the Tennessee loss because Lane coached very weird in that game too.
He did.
Yes.
And Florida took advantage of that. But that being said, imagine if he got both of them. But there's still, I'm sure you saw Chris Couch, the game changer left for Houston. So,
Yeah.
Joe Houston, the special teams guy, is still there. And, hopefully they'll line up straight more of the time. I mean, I think that's, obviously been the big issue.
I talked to my buddy who is actually on staff at Florida, and I'm not going to say his name or his position, but he has extremely high hopes, similar to yours, that this team is a playoff team, provided everyone stays healthy, of course. Like you mentioned, Brockway has to stay healthy. Playoff team, potential national champion. And I was like, wow. I mean, you are drinking the Kool-Aid, my friend.
I think that's a little high, but they could sneak in the playoffs. Yeah.
I think if they sneak in the playoffs, they have a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you have a chance, absolutely. But we're going to agree to disagree, Joey. I don't think that 8 wins gets Napier fired, and I truly don't care how it looks, to be honest with you. The one loss last year that was kind of ugly that Josh just mentioned was A&M. A&M and Cooey just mentioned it too. Cameron Cooey just said Texas A&M loss.
The Miami loss was bad because it was embarrassing. It was the first game of the year, national TV, embarrassing.
And Cam did what he wanted to do.
Literally was walking all over the field.
Texas A&M too was pretty bad. Although that was a little bit of a wonky game because of the weather delay and everything. And it was
They had their backup quarterback, right? Is that right?
But they didn't seem
Harris. Yeah.
but they didn't seem prepared for him. That was what was crazy
At all.
about
Right.
that. Yeah.
They didn't seem prepared. You
Yeah.
know, they didn't seem prepared. One might say
Yeah.
they did not seem very coordinated on the defensive
Yeah.
side of the ball.
Well, one of the problems was I think they were kind of frustrated with some of the coaching on the defensive side of the ball. They felt like that they were kind of playing in quicksand, and the bye week got them to play more kind of loose and free and easy and not reacting so much and just playing more with their instincts.
Right.
And that kind of keyed the defensive turnaround a little bit, I think. And they're hoping that that's going to carry over into this season as well. With the talent that they have on the defensive side of the ball. But, to me, like another guy, too, that is going to be interesting because he was a top 10 talent, and we haven't quite seen it yet, but you wonder if or when it's going to come is LJ McCray
Yeah.
Ooh.
as an edge rusher. Like, is
Freak.
that going to come? And if that does come, then you've got another factor there in it. But Caleb Banks is projected first-round draft pick. I mean, he is, showed that he was the real deal last year in terms of pass rusher coming up the middle, up the gut a little bit, which is something Florida had not had in a while. So I think that bodes well, and I think Ron Roberts and the scheme is a little better than it was under Austin Armstrong and Patrick Toney, and a little bit more creating more turnovers too, which was really big. And that's got to continue as well. That was a big problem earlier in the Napier tenure, and Patrick Toney, third down defense was very bad, but those things seem to be shoring up a little bit, and I think that a lot of it has to do with just kind of the depth and the more experience on both lines of scrimmage.
I like it. I like that a lot. Before we switch gears, because I do feel like this kind of caters more to the football world than anything else. What are your thoughts on the NIL and the transfer portal and how that correlates to the college? Well, you kind of alluded to it earlier, but
Yeah.
just to go back into it a little bit.
It's tough in terms of, I think coaches today have a much more difficult job with regards to that and just with regards to the whole idea. But I think, the tipping point was the pandemic a little bit in terms of the fact that from an economic justice standpoint, we saw what was happening with, them, begging kids to come back and play because it was supporting their jobs. So you realize that some kind of compensation need to be needed. Now, is it out of whack with the collectives? Yeah, probably. And you would hope that, this House versus NCAA settlement is going to come hopefully any minute now, any day now, any week now. And it'll create a little more structure in that regard and maybe make things, and they're supposed to have a clearinghouse for the NIL in terms of their legitimacy of the deals that they're getting. Good luck with that, right?
Right.
But we'll see how it all plays out in terms of that. And then, the transfer portal, it just hurts continuity too. But I think, you have to learn, and I think what Todd showed too is that, especially in the college basketball realm and in the football realm too, it's still a continuity game. And the teams that can get players to stay for 2 or 3 years, I still think has an advantage of teams that completely turn themselves over every year.
I have a follow-up on the NIL stuff.
Yeah.
So with like the NIL being what it is, like how hard is it for? And you've been doing it for 3 decades. Like how much different is it for a coach to coach his roster and now also have to manage like NIL because they pocket watch, they know what so and so is allegedly getting off his deals. Have you seen like how that's changed locker rooms per se?
Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit there. And, like, you look back at the Denzel Aberdeen situation, for example. When Xavier Lee came in, he made X amount of money. You heard different things.
Yeah.
But Denzel Aberdeen wanted Xavier Lee money, and Todd Golden had to flat tell him, hey, we don't think that you're worth what Xavier Lee is worth, even though Denzel was part of a national championship team. And Denzel took offense to that. He went in the transfer portal, and he got that money from Kentucky. And that's just where we are now. It's the unfortunate byproduct of it. And who do you blame? I mean, do you blame Denzel for being greedy? Do you blame I blame the system more, you know, the 100%. Fact that it's like we're
Bingo.
in this, we're in the system now where kids have to make these decisions, and that there's no, you would hope it would get to the point where at least you would have some kind of contract status or something where you can, lock people down for multiple years.
I think you almost have to treat them as like contracts. Like if they're no longer amateur athletes, I think we can kiss that goodbye. Like the toothpaste has been squeezed out of the tube. You can't put it back in. They are now like they are now on contract, in my opinion. The one thing I would say is like with the NIL, excuse me, is that because there is no like because you mentioned the deal, the house deal where there's going to be like a $23 million cap. But who's to stop a collective or whoever from going above and beyond? Like, the salary cap is the salary cap. I say it very loosely with air quotes, $23 million. But our collective is going to kick in. They don't got to kick in 23 anymore, but they can still kick in 10. And so, I don't think that stops. Like, it doesn't end, unfortunately. I think. Well,
they're supposed to come up with a system where they're going to, evaluate the legitimacy of the collective deals, but like I said, good luck policing that.
Yeah, good luck.
And those things will be challenged in court. There'll be some Tennessee lawmaker that'll be, I can't pay my, it's unfair because Alabama's paying this kid X, and we got to, and it's because they just, like I said, what they say in the SEC, it just means more. They just care more down here. They want their guys, and they want their best players that they can get. So it's. I think it is going to be still be a mess in some respects. Particularly to police that whole clearinghouse aspect of it.
Yeah, good luck. I would never want that job. Like Texas Tech, what they're doing on across all platforms of sports is insane. And if you're not paying attention to what they're doing, they got a billionaire oil maker in his 30s, a Texas Tech alum that is dumping money at an extremely high rate into Texas Tech athletics.
Got the best pitcher in college softball, right?
and it's already pledged that I'm gonna get the next one next year too. So I mean,
BYU spent a lot of money on the best player also.
So I don't know how you, like you said, you know it. I don't know how you police it. I don't know that you can. It's for me personally, it's disgusting.
But I will say this, and about recruiting ratings too, and about people that project, And look, we all knew that, there's some can't misses like Cooper Flagg and stuff. But
Right.
listen, I also remember Casey Hill and Chris Walker, as a cautionary tale of 5 stars that
Yep.
didn't pan out. And then, of course, you look at a guy like Scotty Wilbekin, who is a borderline 3-star, who enrolled early as a 17-year-old from the Rock School in Gainesville, became SEC Player of the Year. So
Right.
you see that all the time. And again, that goes back to like having a chip on your shoulder and working.
Yeah.
This past Florida National Championship team didn't have a top 100 recruit on it,
Wow, that's
which
wild.
is amazing.
That is crazy.
If you think about
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And
100.
Walter Clayton was like a 0-1 star, right? That went to
Yeah.
Iona
Yeah.
and became, the Final Four, the most valuable player of March Madness by the time he was a senior. So that tells you exactly, like, and a first-round pick. That
You know
tells
it,
you
like-
exactly that it's not, where you are coming out of high school, and there's a lot of room to grow physically, mentally, and in, honing the craft of your game. And the kids that work the hardest are the ones that are going to come out on top eventually.
100% agree. There's one name I want to throw out. Tallahassee Lincoln. It would have been like, early 2000s. Fred Rouse.
Fred Rouse.
You remember that name?
Fred Rouse? Okay.
5-star consensus All-American. Choked out his wide receivers coach his freshman year. Never
Right.
made it. The amount of money that kid would have made in the NIL market is insane.
Fred-
But it would have been a miss.
Fred Rouse is the greatest athlete I've ever seen in high school.
No doubt. 100%
And it's
co-sign.
pretty like easily for me. Like when
Yeah.
people ask me that question, for me it is easily Fred Rouse.
Because I get asked that all the time.
Same. So do I.
I'm with you. It is very much so. Like, I don't have a whole lot of hesitation
No.
when I say I played against Tim Tebow. I watched Tim Tebow. Fred Rouse would literally play corner, and the ball would snap. He would be on a knee in front of the receiver,
Yes.
just to troll him,
Yes.
and he never got beat deep.
Ever. Or across the middle. Or
Ever.
Ever.
No,
Anywhere.
He was a freak show. He was a freak.
And he was a better receiver than he was DB.
100%.
When I going back to QS High School, when I covered the Conks, one of the best high school players I ever covered was Rand Carthon, who
Yeah.
ran for I think 280 against Barron Collier, 390 against Chaminade. But I will say, who trumped him, the best high school football player that I've ever covered was probably C.J. Spiller.
Ooh.
CJ was solid.
Blake freaking Butler, baby.
He was amazing. Yeah,
He was very, very good.
yeah.
Yeah. Best highlights film I've ever seen in high school, though? Chris?
I didn't know it.
Noel Devine.
Noah Devine, baby.
God, he was good in high
North
school.
Fort Myers.
Yes.
But no, those guys, like, not those two, but like Rouse would have been
Right.
an absolute bust.
Right. Like you said, somebody would have dumped a lot of money into him because talent-wise, oh my God, like I can't begin to tell you how talented the kid was.
Yeah.
But he goes to Florida State, gets in trouble there. Goes to UTEP, doesn't make it there. Goes to like UNLV, something like that, doesn't make it there. Like
There's another receiver went to Alabama from South Florida that did the same thing, same path. I can't think of his name. It'll hit me in a minute.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things, man, where, in my opinion, the NIL specifically, I just think it's so hard to be a coach in today's game because, I mean, some of those guys are making almost as much as the coach. And position coach wise, some of them are making more than that guy.
Yeah.
So how does
The guy
that guy,
coaching them,
how does that guy police the room and try to keep everybody happy, but also show that he's the man in the room? Because if he does that and he does the discipline aspect of it, you said it earlier, and I think you've said it as well, but you know, the kid, it's easy for a guy to say, you know what, I'm going to take my ball and I'm going to go somewhere else that's going to pay me the same amount of money. I don't have to deal with this guy.
Yeah.
So coaching hard is hard to do these days.
No
Last
question.
thing before we let you go, Gator baseball obviously didn't have the year that they expected. Somebody asked about Sully in the chat earlier. We'll get to that in a second. But what is your outlook for next year for Gator baseball? Do you think they continue the success of getting to the College World Series? How does that play out?
Well, I think the best thing they have going, and one of the few bright spots, and I wrote about him, is the emergence of Aiden King. I mean, this kid.
Bishop
And,
Snyder.
yes. By the end of his
Good.
freshman year, was really, and there are going to be some questions about, should they have saved him? And they pitched. I think he got good experience in that Fairfield game. It was a good way for him to end his season.
Yeah.
They weren't going to go anywhere anyway. If you want to make an argument about Aiden King, you probably would have made the argument of pitching him in that first game on Friday.
Right.
But you can't hold him on Sunday in that situation and not have him pitch at the end of the year like that because there were very few arms on that team you could trust at the end of the year.
Right.
I mean, so few. I mean, it was basically Aiden King and Clemente were the only two arms you could trust.
Yeah.
Nobody else on that team. I mean, it was that bad at the end. And I just think the injuries got to him. Luke Heyman, losing him behind the plate. Colby Shelton. You had, through that whole infield defense out of whack, moving Bose to shortstop, playing Landon Stripling. Yeah. So I think that, it's going to be interesting because Shelton and Heyman will probably go to the draft, I would think. And then Kyle Jones, you'd have to wonder if he gets healthy because that was the original plan, that it was going to be more of a speed team with him in center field. Blake Sear was a little bit of a disappointment, and he might be moving on too. So he's going to have to get a lot of position players and kind of rebuild this thing. But I think that, look, he's a tough coach. Obviously, he's got a temper. We know that. And I said this on another podcast. Hot mic and a hot temper is a bad combination.
Yeah.
And he got, called out for, put on blast nationally about that. It went viral. Where, he probably, but listen, he was frustrated about the change in the start times. And, there were some liberal changes throughout that tournament. He just handled it the wrong way. But I think, I think it's going to be like Aiden King to me and Jake Clemente. And you've got some, but they have to really, build that depth in that pitching staff where they can get more arms that they can trust. And Brendan Lawson is another guy offensively to build around. I mean, he's a very good freshman.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a guy that showed a lot and hit a little lull in May, but I think picked it back up in the postseason a little bit. And it's someone, too, that, has a lot of talent. His natural position is actually shortstop, so I'll be interested to see if they move him there.
I think it's the lull in May, I think, is a pretty common thing for most freshmen just because it's such a long season.
Yep.
No
it's
question.
a lot of games in a shorter amount of time than most high schools are used to. And so you get that. And then once you kind of figure it out and you work out of it, then, when
that's
you get
what
to June,
made what Aiden King did even more impressive.
I
Was
agree.
that he didn't have that wall, and he got stronger and better as the season went on. And I talked to his pitching coach at Bishop Snyder, Rusty Ketchum, great guy. And gave me a lot of insight into him just as a competitor and how when he was a freshman, he won the ball against Jacksonville Bulls, who, as you know, is like one of the best programs, not only in the Jacksonville area, but in the whole state. So that's the kind of guy he is. So he's the bright spot, and you got to build around him pitching-wise next year.
I like it. I like it a lot. Do you want to talk about Sully real quick, or are we good with that?
I mean, I'm good with that.
Okay.
But, no, I'm good.
Yeah. We had mentioned it in a text. We would do that, but
It's 10-15.
yeah,
Kevin's been perfect.
Yeah, I agree. So let's end it here. Kevin, man, we appreciate you coming on. It's been a blast. Anything you want to add to the situation? Do you want to talk about anything specific?
No, I'm good. Just I love being up here with you guys. It was so much fun. We'll have to do it again another time. And
That was going to be my one question was, can we get you on again?
Yeah.
right.
We'll work on it. My schedule can be a little busy at times, but we'll try to make it happen. In terms of anything for you guys, and I know that you got a good following up here, and love the people up in Lake City.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir, man. We appreciate you coming on. This is going to be it for tonight. This has been Joey Edge along with Chris Martinez and Kevin Brockway and Josh McCardle and Curtis Mesnard. We are Front Porch Sitting. See you next time, sitters.
All right, thank you guys.